Ever look in the mirror and just wonder, why do I have my mom's eyes but my dad's nose? Or, how come some traits just seem to skip a generation? Well, it's not random. Not at all. It's actually all clues written in a biological code that connects, well, everything. Every living thing on this planet. So today, we're going to go on a little journey. We're going to crack that code, uncover the secrets of heredity, and piece together the incredible story of evolution.
All right, so here's the game plan. First up, we'll tackle the puzzle of heredity. Then we'll see how a monk with some peat plants basically cracked the entire code of genetics. After that, we're jumping on board with Darwin to understand the amazing diversity of life. We'll even play detective, looking at clues in fossils and bones. Then we'll bring it all home and trace our own human story. And to wrap it all up, we'll do a quick review to make sure you're totally exam ready. Let's get into it.
Okay, first section, the puzzle of heredity. We're unlocking the secrets of family resemblances. So let's dive right into that big mystery, right? How are traits actually passed from parents to their kids? I mean, for centuries, people were just stumped. How do you get this incredible mix of looking like your parents, but also being totally unique? It was, one of the biggest puzzles in science.
And the answer, it turns out, comes down to one simple word: heredity. That's it. It's the whole process of passing on traits. It's the reason a cat has kittens, not puppies, and why an apple seed, well, it grows into an apple tree. And the first guy to really roll up his sleeves and figure this out, a monk from Austria named Gregor Mendel.
All right, Section 2, Mendel's pea plant principles, how a gardener monk cracked the code of inheritance. And honestly, what Mendel figured out was just brilliant. You gotta remember, he didn't have any of the fancy labs or DNA tech we have today. Nope, he just had a garden, a bunch of pea plants, and a super sharp eye for detail. And with just that, he laid out the fundamental laws of how we inherit things.
So here's what he did. It's a classic experiment. He took pure tall plants and crossed them with pure dwarf plants. Simple enough. But the first batch of offspring, what we call the F1 generation, were all tall. Every single one. It was like the dwarf trait just poof, vanished. But, and this is the genius part, when he let those tall plants pollinate themselves, guess what happened in the next generation? The dwarf trait came back. And it came back in this perfect 3-to-1 ratio. That was the huge clue. It meant traits weren't just blending together like paint. They were separate little packets of information.
And this led him to this amazing conclusion. He figured that traits must be controlled by pairs of what he called factors. We call them alleles today. So the factor for being tall, let's use a capital T, was dominant. It would always show up if it was there. It completely masked the effect of the other factor, the one for being a dwarf plant, which we'll call lowercase t. That one's recessive. So those first-generation plants, they actually had both factors, but you could only see the dominant tall one.
Okay, so this brings us to two super important words you gotta know: genotype and phenotype. The genotype is the actual genetic code on the inside. Is it TT, TT, or TT? That's the blueprint. The phenotype is what you can actually see on the outside. Is the plant tall or is it dwarf? It's the final product. And here's the cool part. You can have two plants that are both tall, same phenotype, but have totally different genotypes on the inside. It's the hidden code versus what you actually see.
All right, let's switch gears a bit. From the garden to the entire world. Section 3, Darwin's theory of evolution. This is the story of an explorer's journey to explain the diversity of life. See, while Mendel was zeroed in on how traits get passed down, Darwin was asking an even bigger question. He was looking around and wondering, why are there so many different kinds of living things? I mean, where did all this incredible variety come from?
And after this epic 5-year trip around the world on a ship called the HMS Beagle, Darwin came up with a truly revolutionary idea: evolution by natural selection. And the quote here really sums it up. It's not about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about being the most adaptable. The core idea is that whatever traits help you survive and have babies in your particular environment, those are the traits that are going to get passed on to the next generation.
Let's make this super simple with a story. Imagine you've got a bunch of red beetles living on some green bushes, okay? Now, along come some crows, and those red beetles stick out like a sore thumb. Easy lunch for the crows. But what if, just by a random genetic shuffle, a green beetle is born? Suddenly, that little guy is camouflaged. The crows can't see it as well. So, the red beetles get eaten, but the green ones survive, have little green beetle babies, and pass on that green gene. Fast forward a few generations, and what do you have? A whole population of green beetles. Nature itself has selected the best color for survival. It's so simple, but so incredibly powerful.
So Darwin's theory is powerful, for sure, but how do we know it actually happened? Well, the clues are literally everywhere, hidden in stone and bone. It's time to put on our detective hats. Let's look at the evidence.
Clue number 1. Fossils. Think of fossils as Earth's ancient diary preserved in rock. They show us snapshots of life from the past. Creatures that don't exist anymore, like this 160 million-year-old Ketasaurus dinosaur found right in India. The study of these is called paleontology, and it lets us read the pages of this diary and see how life has changed over millions and millions of years. Okay, clue number 2 is super cool. Homologous organs. Now just look at the forelimb of a whale and a horse. One's a flipper for swimming, the other's a leg for running. They do totally different jobs, right? But if you look at the bones inside, the structure is almost the same. This is a massive clue. It tells us that they probably inherited that basic bone blueprint from a common ancestor way back when.
And for our third clue, we have what are called connecting links. These are the holy grail for paleontologists. Take a look at Archaeopteryx. This thing is amazing. It had feathers like a bird, right? But it also had teeth, claws on its wings, and a long bony tail like a reptile. It's the perfect in-between fossil, a beautiful snapshot showing the transition from reptiles to birds. Just incredible.
Okay, so we've talked about peas and beetles and dinosaurs. Now let's talk about us. Let's trace our own evolutionary journey. Because all these big ideas from Mendel and Darwin, they don't just apply to other species, they tell our story too. We can literally follow the genetic breadcrumbs back in time.
And what our genes tell us is something pretty profound. Look around the world. We all look so different, right? But genetically, we are all one species, Homo sapiens, and our DNA points to a single origin, Africa. That's what the out-of-Africa theory is all about. Our earliest ancestors evolved there, and then over thousands of years, they migrated out and spread across the entire globe. It's an incredible story of a shared journey, and it's all written right there in our DNA.
And man, what a long journey it was. Just look at this timeline of some of the big milestones. We start with Homo habilis, the handyman, about 2.5 million years ago. Then comes Homo erectus, who started walking upright. We see our close cousins, the Neanderthals, pop up around 100,000 years ago. And then finally us, Homo sapiens, modern humans, appearing on the scene. Each step here represents huge adaptations over unimaginable stretches of time.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground, from Mendel's little pea garden all the way to our own human family tree. So to make sure all this stuff really sinks in, let's switch gears and get into a little exam-ready review. We're going to test our knowledge and see how these ideas work in practice. You ready?
Okay, part 1, multiple choice questions. Now with these, it's not just about picking the right letter. The real trick is knowing why the other choices are wrong. Let's give it a shot.
Here's the first one. Which of the following is not a variation in a rose plant? We've got A, colored petals, B, spines, C, tendrils, and D, leaf margin. Well, you've definitely seen roses with different color petals, right? And some have more spines than others. Even the edges of the leaves can vary. Those are all variations. But tendrils, those are the little curly things plants use to climb. You see them on grapevines, not roses. So the answer's gotta be C, tendrils. Next up, an easy one. The study of fossils is called what? Your options are geology, paleontology, biology, or embryology. We talked about this one. It is, of course, B, paleontology. That's the science of digging into life's ancient history. Okay, let's shake it up. Part 2 is assertion and reason. Now, these can be a little tricky. You get 2 statements, you have to figure out if each one is true on its own, and then, this is the important part, if the reason actually explains the assertion. Let's see. Here we go. Assertion A. Variations are important for the survival of a species. Reason R. Variations allow organisms to adapt to changing environments. Okay, let's break it down. Is assertion A true? Are variations important for survival? Yes, that's Darwin 101. Is reason R true? Do variations allow adaptation? Yes, they do. Now for the final check. Does R explain A? Absolutely. The whole point of variation is that it gives nature options to choose from for adaptation. So this is a perfect match. Both are true, and R is the correct explanation. Let's try one more. Assertion A. The sex of a baby is determined by the father. And the reason R. A human male has one X and one Y chromosome. Okay, think about it. Is assertion A true? Yes, it is. How about reason R? Is it true that males have an X and a Y? Yep. So, does the reason explain the assertion?
It sure does. A mother can only pass on an X chromosome. The father can pass on either an X or a Y. So it's his contribution that decides it. Another perfect match.
Okay, moving on to part 3, case-based questions. This is where we take all this theory and apply it to a real-world problem. Let's see if we can solve a little puzzle. Here's the situation. A farmer has 2 mango trees. Tree A gives a ton of mangoes, but pests always get them. Tree B doesn't get pests, but it barely produces any mangoes. The farmer's goal is obvious, right? They want one tree that's pest-free and gives lots and lots of fruit. So the first question is, can the farmer actually create a new variety with both of those good traits? And the answer is a big yes. This is basically what humans have been doing for thousands of years. It's called artificial selection. The farmer can cross-pollinate the 2 trees, basically mixing their genes. The baby trees will have all sorts of combinations of traits. Then the farmer just has to pick the ones that hit the jackpot, the ones that are both pest-free and high yield, and keep breeding those. Over time, they're essentially guiding the evolution of their perfect mango tree.
Almost there. Part 4, short answer questions. For these, the goal is to explain these big ideas in your own words, nice and clear. Imagine you're explaining it to a friend.
First question, what are homologous organs? Give one example. Okay, remember those clues for evolution? Homologous organs are body parts in different animals that have the same basic bone structure because they came from a common ancestor, but they're used for totally different things. The best example? The forelimb of a human, a whale, and a bat. It's the same set of bones, but one is for grabbing, one's for swimming, and one's for flying. Same blueprint, different jobs.
And the next one. Explain Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. Now this is a big one, and it's easy to get wrong. It doesn't mean the strongest or the fastest. Fittest means the best fit for the environment. It's about having the specific traits or variations that help you survive and reproduce in your particular little corner of the world. Those individuals are more likely to pass on their genes, and that's how species adapt over time.
So from a quiet garden full of peas all the way to our own DNA, we've seen how it all connects. Heredity creates the variation, and evolution steers the ship. It's this incredible unfolding story that links every single living thing. But you know what? The story isn't finished. We're living in a world that's changing faster than ever before. So the real final question to ask yourself is this: what's the next chapter in our evolutionary story going to be? The truth is, we're writing it right now. So keep asking those big questions and never stop exploring.